Hi, everyone. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 72 years old. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound absolutely insane, but I promise you, every single word is true. And honestly, I'm still processing it all myself. Let me start by saying this. I never thought my own children would be the ones to break my heart into a million pieces. But here we are. And what they said to me 3 months ago, well, let's just say it changed everything. Everything. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about my life first, because you need to understand what led to this moment that completely shattered my world. I've been a widow for 8 years now. My husband Thomas passed from cancer, and let me tell you, watching the love of your life fade away, it's something that stays with you forever. We were married for 42 beautiful years. Not perfect, but beautiful. We had 3 children together. James, who's now 45, Lisa, who's 42, and my youngest, Kevin, who just turned 38. For most of my adult life, I was what you'd call a traditional mother and wife. I worked part-time as a school secretary while Thomas worked as an engineer, but my real job was taking care of our family. And I mean, really taking care of them. I was the one who stayed up all night when they had fevers, who drove them to every soccer practice and piano lesson, who helped with homework until my eyes burned from exhaustion. When the kids were teenagers, I went back to school myself. Can you imagine? A 40-year-old woman sitting in college classes feeling ancient next to all those young faces? But I did it. I got my degree in business administration because I wanted to contribute more to our family's financial security. Thomas was so proud of me. He'd tell everyone about his wife who went back to college and graduated with honors. After I graduated, I started working full-time at a local accounting firm. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and I was good at it. Really good at it. Thomas and I, we were a team. We saved every penny we could, invested wisely, paid off our house early. We wanted to make sure our kids had everything they needed and that we'd be secure in our retirement. And let me tell you about the sacrifices I made for those children. When James wanted to go to that expensive private college, I took a second job on weekends to help pay for it. When Lisa's first marriage fell apart and she needed money for a lawyer, I emptied half of my own savings account without even blinking. When Kevin decided he wanted to start his own business and needed startup capital, Thomas and I took out a second mortgage on our house. We did it all happily, you understand? That's what parents do. That's what love looks like. After Thomas died, I threw myself into work even harder. Grief is a funny thing. It either paralyzes you or it makes you move constantly just to avoid sitting still with your thoughts. I chose to move. I worked until I was 68, well past retirement age, because staying busy kept the loneliness at bay. But 4 years ago, my knees started giving me serious trouble. Arthritis runs in my family, and mine hit hard and fast. Some days I could barely walk from my bedroom to the kitchen. That's when I finally decided to retire and focus on my health. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And trust me, you're gonna want to hear this part. When Thomas and I bought our house back in 1985, we paid $89,000 for it. It was a modest 3-bedroom home in what was then considered a decent but unremarkable neighborhood. Over the years, we maintained it beautifully, renovated the kitchen twice, finished the basement, and added a lovely garden that was my pride and joy. What we didn't realize was that our little neighborhood would become one of the most desirable areas in the city. Those tech companies that moved in about 15 years ago, they transformed everything. Young professionals started buying up houses left and right, and property values went through the roof. By the time I retired, my house was worth, are you ready for this? $850,000. I nearly fainted when the realtor told me. $850,000 for my little 3-bedroom home. Add to that Thomas's life insurance, our retirement savings, and my own pension, and I was sitting on about $1.2 million. I know, I could hardly believe it myself. Eleanor, the woman who used to clip coupons and buy generic cereal, was technically a millionaire. But here's the thing about money when you're older and alone. It doesn't buy you the things you really want. It can't bring back your husband's laugh or fill the silence in your house. It can't make your children call more often or erase the fact that your grandchildren barely know you. Because that's the truth I haven't told you yet. My relationship with my children, it wasn't what I thought it was. After Thomas died, I expected we'd grow closer. I thought maybe they'd check in more often. Maybe we'd have Sunday dinners together. Maybe they'd want to hear stories about their father. But instead, the opposite happened. They seemed to pull away, like my grief was something contagious they didn't want to catch. James lives about 30 minutes away with his wife and 2 teenage daughters. He's a successful lawyer, makes excellent money, drives a BMW, lives in a house that's probably worth more than mine. But do you know how often I see my own granddaughters? Maybe 3 times a year? Christmas, Easter, and someone's birthday if I'm lucky. Lisa moved to Portland after her divorce, and I understand that. Sometimes you need distance to heal. But she's been there for 12 years now, and in all that time, she's visited me exactly 4 times. 4 times in 12 years. She calls maybe once a month, and when she does, the conversations feel forced, like she's checking something off a to-do list. And Kevin, my baby Kevin, he still lives in the same city as me, just 20 minutes away. He never married, no kids, works in IT for some company I can never remember the name of. He's always been the most independent of my children, but also the most distant. I used to think it was just his personality, but now I'm not so sure. The thing is, I convinced myself this was normal. Modern families are busy, right? Adult children have their own lives. They don't need to be constantly checking on their mother. I told myself this over and over, especially during those long, quiet evenings when the house felt too big and too empty. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in the way our conversations became shorter and more superficial. I could see it in how they'd exchange glances when they thought I wasn't looking during our rare family gatherings. I could hear it in the relief in their voices when our phone calls ended. I thought maybe if I moved closer to one of them, things would be different. Or maybe if I sold the house and got something smaller, more manageable, they'd worry less about me. I started mentioning these ideas during our conversations, just testing the waters. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Every time I mentioned the house, or money, or what I might do with my assets, they perked up. Suddenly, they were interested. Suddenly, they had opinions. "Oh, Mom, you don't need to think about that yet," James would say. But his voice had this edge to it, like he was worried I might do something rash. "Whatever you decide, just make sure you think it through carefully," Lisa would add. And I started to wonder what exactly she thought I needed to think through. Kevin was more direct, as usual. "Just don't make any big decisions without talking to us first, okay?" Us. Like they were a united front, and I was, the opposition? But I pushed those thoughts away. These were my children. The babies I'd nursed through midnight fevers and held during thunderstorms. The teenagers I'd supported through heartbreaks and helped with college applications. The young adults I'd cheered for at graduations and weddings. They loved me. Of course they loved me. That's what I told myself right up until 3 months ago, when my entire world came crashing down. It started with a phone call from James. This was unusual because, like I said, my children don't call often, and when they do, it's usually brief. But this call felt different from the moment I heard his voice. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling today?" Even that question struck me as odd. How are you feeling today? Not, how are you? But, how are you feeling today? Like he was checking on a specific condition. "I'm fine, sweetheart. just finished my morning walk. My knees are actually feeling pretty good today." "That's great, Mom. Listen, I was wondering if you'd like to have lunch this weekend, maybe Saturday?" I almost dropped the phone. James asking me to lunch? When was the last time that had happened? I couldn't even remember. "Of course, I'd love that. Should I cook or did you want to go somewhere?" "Actually, I was thinking we could meet at that little cafe downtown, the one near the park. Would that work for you?" It would work perfectly, and I told him so. I spent the next 3 days practically floating around my house, planning what I'd wear, thinking about what we might talk about. Maybe he wanted to tell me about the girls' school achievements. Maybe he'd finally realized how much I missed him, having him in my life. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early because I didn't want to risk being late. I ordered a coffee and sat at a table by the window, watching for James's BMW to pull into the parking lot. When I saw him walking toward the entrance, my heart actually skipped with happiness. But the moment he sat down across from me, I knew this wasn't going to be the heartwarming mother-son lunch I'd imagined. "Mom, we need to talk." 4 words that no parent ever wants to hear from their adult child. I felt my coffee cup grow cold in my hands as I waited for whatever was coming next. "About what, honey?" He shifted in his seat, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who used to confess to breaking something before I'd even discovered it was broken. "About your future. About your living situation." "My living situation? I own my home outright. I have no debt. I'm healthy enough to live independently. What could there possibly be to discuss about my living situation?" "I don't see how you understand." "Mom, you're 72 years old. You're living alone in a big house. What if something happens to you? What if you fall and no one finds you for days? What if your arthritis gets worse and you can't take care of yourself?" These were valid concerns, I suppose, but something about the way he was presenting them felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced this conversation. "James, I appreciate you worrying about me, but I'm fine. I have neighbors who check on me, I have my medical alert bracelet, and if the time comes when I need more help, we'll cross that bridge then." He leaned forward, and that's when I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before when he looked at me.
Impatience. Maybe even frustration. "But Mom, why wait until something bad happens? There are some really nice retirement communities around here. Places where you'd have people your own age to socialize with, activities to keep you busy, medical staff on site if you need them." Retirement communities? He was talking about retirement communities. "You mean like assisted living?" "Well, some of them offer different levels of care. You could start with independent living and then transition to more assistance if you need it later." I stared at my son across that little cafe table, and suddenly I felt like I was looking at a stranger. When had he started talking to me like I was a problem that needed to be solved? "James, I don't want to live in a retirement community. I want to live in my home. The home your father and I built our life in. The home where I raised you and your siblings." His jaw tightened slightly. "Mom, be practical. That house is way too big for you now. And think about the expenses. Property taxes, maintenance, utilities. Wouldn't it make more sense to sell it and use that money to pay for a nice place where you'd be safe and taken care of?" And there it was, the real reason for this lunch. The house. My $850,000 house. Are you worried about the money, James? What do you mean? Are you worried that I'm going to spend your inheritance on my living expenses? The color drained from his face, but he recovered quickly. Too quickly. Mom, that's not what this is about at all. This is about your safety and happiness. But I could see the lie in his eyes. Maybe I'd always been able to see it, but I'd just chosen not to look. If you're worried about the inheritance, you don't need to be. There will be plenty left for you and your sisters regardless of where I live. This isn't about money, Mom. Isn't it? We sat in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Finally, James sighed and pulled out his phone. Actually, Mom, I'm glad you brought up the money thing, because I wanted to show you something. He scrolled through his phone for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. It was a real estate listing. This is Sunset Manor. It's about 10 minutes from my house. Look at these amenities. They have a pool, a fitness center, organized trips, even a library. And look at this price for a 2-bedroom unit. I looked at the screen. The monthly fee was $4,200. $4,200 a month? I know it seems like a lot, but think about what you're paying now for your house expenses. And this includes meals, housekeeping, activities, everything. It's actually quite reasonable when you break it down. Reasonable. $50,000 a year to live in a place I didn't want to live, surrounded by people I didn't know, eating food I didn't choose, following schedules I didn't set. James, I don't want to live at Sunset Manor. Mom, just think about it, okay? Maybe we could schedule a tour just to see what it's like. I said no. My voice was sharper than I'd intended, but I was starting to feel trapped, like the walls of this cozy little cafe were closing in on me. James put his phone away and reached across the table to pat my hand. It felt condescending. Mom, I know change is scary, especially at your age. At my age. At my age. But sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for our own good. Lisa and Kevin agree with me on this. And there it was, the confirmation that they'd been talking about me, planning for me, deciding what was best for me without actually including me in the conversation. You've discussed this with your siblings? We're just concerned about you, Mom. We love you and we want what's best for you. But what they wanted wasn't what I wanted. What they thought was best for me wasn't what I thought was best for me. And suddenly I realized that my opinion, my actual wants and needs and desires, didn't seem to matter to them at all. The rest of that lunch passed in a blur. James tried to make normal conversation, asking about my garden and my book club, but I could barely focus on his words. All I could think about was the fact that my 3 children had been having meetings about me, and I hadn't been invited. When we hugged goodbye in the parking lot, James whispered in my ear, "Just promise me you'll think about what I said, okay?" I promised, because what else could I do? But as I drove home, I wasn't thinking about Sunset Manor or retirement communities or any of the things James wanted me to consider. I was thinking about how my own son had looked at me like I was a burden, like I was an obstacle standing between him and something he wanted. And that something, I was beginning to suspect, was my money. But wait, you guys aren't going to believe what happened next. Because that conversation with James, that was just the beginning. What my other 2 children said to me over the next few weeks, it's going to shock you just as much as it shocked me. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you about the phone call I got from Lisa exactly 1 week later.
I'm doing well, sweetheart. How are things in Portland? Oh, same old, same old. Work is busy, but good. Actually, Mom, I was calling because James told me you 2 had lunch last weekend. Of course he did. I wondered what version of our conversation he'd shared with her. Yes, we did. It was nice to see him. He mentioned you guys talked about your living situation. There it was again. My living situation. Like I was some kind of problem that needed to be managed. We talked about a lot of things, Lisa. Mom, I hope you don't mind, but James and I have been talking and we really think he's right about you considering a change. I mean, that house is so big for just one person, and Portland has some amazing senior communities. Have you ever thought about moving out here? You could be closer to me. Closer to her?
The daughter who sees me 4 times in 12 years wants me to move across the country to be closer to her? Lisa, I've lived in this city my entire adult life. All my doctors are here. My few remaining friends are here. Why would I move to Portland? Well, think about it, Mom. It's a fresh start. No memories of Dad everywhere you look. And the senior communities here are really progressive. They have art classes, hiking groups, wine tastings. You'd love it. Art classes and wine tastings, like I was some stereotype of what a 72-year-old woman should want to do with her time. And, Lisa continued, the cost of living is actually better here. You could sell the house there and buy something really nice here for much less money. There it was again. The house. The money. Lisa, can I ask you something? Of course, Mom. Are you happy with your life? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What do you mean? I mean, are you happy? Are you financially stable? Do you need help with anything? Mom, where is this coming from? Just answer me, please. She was quiet for a moment. I'm doing okay. I mean, Portland is expensive and my salary doesn't go as far as I'd like, but I'm managing. Managing. Not thriving, not comfortable, managing. What if I told you I was thinking about traveling, using some of my savings to see the world while I'm still healthy enough to enjoy it? Another pause, longer this time. Mom, that sounds... that could be dangerous at your age. What if you got sick in a foreign country? What if something happened to you? People travel at my age all the time, Lisa. But Mom, wouldn't it be more responsible to save that money, for emergencies or for the future? Whose future, Lisa? What do you mean? Do you mean my future or your future? Mom, I don't understand why you're being like this. But I was starting to understand. I was starting to see a pattern that I'd been blind to for years. Lisa, let me ask you this. If I decided tomorrow to give away all my money to charity, how would that make you feel? The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched on so long that I actually checked to see if the call had dropped. Mom, why would you even say something like that? That's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to understand something. Understand what? Whether your concern for me is about my well-being or about preserving your inheritance. Mom, Lisa's voice was sharp now, defensive. I can't believe you would even suggest such a thing. Of course I care about your well-being. We all do. We. There it was again. Who is we, Lisa? Your children, Mom, James, Kevin, and me. We talk because we love you and we're worried about you. How often do you talk about me? What? How often do you, James, and Kevin have conversations about me? Another long pause. I don't know, Mom. When things come up, I guess. What kinds of things? Mom, what is this? Why are you interrogating me? Because I'm starting to realize that my own children see me as a bank account with legs. I thought. But I didn't say that. I'm just trying to understand my place in your lives, Lisa. Your place? Mom, you're our mother. Of course you have a place in our lives. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I only hear from any of you when you want something or when you're worried I might do something with my money that you don't approve of. That's not true. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Just because you missed me and wanted to hear my voice? Silence. When was the last time any of you visited me just because you wanted to spend time with me, not because it was a holiday or someone's birthday? More silence. When was the last time you asked me about my dreams, my hopes, what I want to do with the rest of my life? Mom, you can't answer any of those questions, can you? I heard her take a shaky breath. Mom, this isn't fair. We're busy. We have our own lives. I know you do, sweetheart, and I would never want to interfere with that. But I have a life too, and it's still my life to live. The conversation ended awkwardly after that, with Lisa promising to call me soon, and me knowing that soon would probably be months away, unless she needed something. But you guys, that conversation with Lisa was nothing compared to what happened 2 weeks later, because that's when Kevin showed up at my house unannounced. And what he said to me, I'm still trying to process it. It was a Saturday morning, and I was in my garden pulling weeds.
Gardening has always been my therapy, you know? There's something about working with the soil, nurturing things that grow, that helps me think through problems. And trust me, I had a lot to think through. I was so focused on my tomato plants that I didn't hear Kevin's car pull into my driveway. The first I knew he was there was when I heard his voice behind me. Mom, what are you doing? I turned around and there he was, standing on my patio in his usual uniform of jeans and a polo shirt, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Hi, sweetheart. What a nice surprise. I'm just doing some weeding. These tomatoes are going to be beautiful this year. Kevin glanced at my garden with the same expression someone might use when looking at a pile of dirty laundry. He's never been interested in growing things. Mom, you shouldn't be doing yard work. What if you hurt yourself? Kevin, I've been gardening for 40 years. I think I know how to pull a few weeds without injuring myself. But what if you fell? What if no one found you for hours? Here we go again, I thought. The same script James had used, the same concerns Lisa had voiced. Would you like some iced tea? It's getting warm out here. Actually, Mom, I was hoping we could talk inside. Something about his tone made my stomach clench. I followed him into my kitchen, washing my hands at the sink while he sat down at my table. The same table where I'd served him thousands of meals, helped him with homework, listened to his teenage problems. What's on your mind, honey? Kevin looked around my kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time. His eyes lingered on the window over the sink, the one that looks out onto my backyard where we used to have barbecues and birthday parties. This is a nice house, Mom. Thank you. Your father and I were very proud of it. It must be worth a lot of money now. There it was, not even 5 minutes into the conversation, and we were talking about money. I suppose it is. James told me you two talked about retirement communities. Of course he did. I was starting to wonder if my children had a group chat dedicated to discussing my life. We talked about a lot of things. Mom, I think James is right. I think you should seriously consider selling this place. I sat down across from him, studying his face. Kevin has always been the most direct of my children, but there was something different about him today. Something harder. Why? Because you're getting older and this house is becoming a liability. A liability. Mom, let's be realistic here. You're 72 years old. Your arthritis is getting worse. What happens when you can't climb the stairs anymore? What happens when you can't maintain this place? Then I'll hire someone to help me, or I'll make modifications to make it easier to live here. That's expensive, Mom. Why spend money on modifications when you could just sell and move somewhere more appropriate for someone your age? Someone my age. There it was again, like being 72 automatically disqualified me from making my own decisions about my own life. Kevin, this is my home. I raised you here. Your father and I made a life here. I'm not ready to give that up. He leaned forward, and for a moment I thought I saw a flash of impatience cross his face.
Mom, you need to start thinking practically. You can't hold on to this house for sentimental reasons when it doesn't make financial sense. Financial sense for whom? What do you mean? Does it not make financial sense for me, or does it not make financial sense for you? Kevin's jaw tightened. Mom, this isn't about me. Isn't it? You and your siblings seem awfully interested in what I do with my assets. Because we care about you. Do you? Or do you care about your inheritance? The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Kevin stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him deciding whether to keep pretending or to finally tell me the truth. He chose the truth. Mom, let's be honest here. You have over $1 million in assets. Do you really think it's fair for you to spend all of that on expensive home modifications and caregivers when you could just move to a place that's designed for people your age? It's my money. But it's our inheritance. There it was. Finally, the truth that had been lurking under every conversation, every suggestion, every expression of concern. Your inheritance. Mom, Dad worked his whole life for that money. You worked for that money. Don't you want it to go to your children? I stared at my youngest son. This man I'd held as a baby, this child I'd sacrificed for, this adult I'd supported through every major decision of his life. And I felt something break inside me. Kevin, let me ask you something. Do you love me? Of course I love you, Mom. What kind of question is that? If I spent every penny I had on my own care and comfort, and there was nothing left when I died, would you still love me? He hesitated. He actually hesitated. Mom, that's a ridiculous hypothetical. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like your love for me is directly tied to how much money I leave behind. That's not fair. Isn't it? Kevin, when was the last time you visited me just because you wanted to see me? I'm here now. You're here because you want to talk me into selling my house. When was the last time you called me just to say hello? Silence. When was the last time you remembered my birthday without your siblings reminding you? More silence.
When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling, what I was reading, what made me happy that day? Kevin shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. Mom, you're being dramatic. Am I? Because from my perspective, the only time any of you show interest in my life is when you're worried I might do something that affects your financial future. That's not true. Then prove it. Tell me one thing about my life right now that has nothing to do with this house or my money. He opened his mouth, then closed it, opened it again, then looked away. I know you like gardening. What else? You read a lot. What am I reading right now? I don't know. What's my favorite restaurant? I don't know. Who are my friends? Mom, You don't know anything about my actual life, Kevin. You only know about my assets. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against my kitchen floor. This is ridiculous. I came here because I care about you. No, you came here because James and Lisa told you to. You came here because you're all worried that I might spend your inheritance on myself. So what if we are? Kevin's voice was rising now, and I could see the real frustration that had been building up. Is that so wrong? Is it wrong for children to expect to inherit something from their parents? It's wrong when that expectation comes before caring about the parent who's still alive. We do care about you. Show me one way that any of you have cared about my happiness, my comfort, my desires that didn't involve protecting your future inheritance. Kevin stared at me, and I could see him trying to come up with an answer. But there wasn't one, and we both knew it. You know what, Mom? Maybe you're right. Maybe we are thinking about the inheritance. But is that really so terrible?
Do you know how hard it is for people our age to get ahead? Do you know what houses cost now? What it costs to raise kids? Lisa is struggling in Portland. James has college tuition coming up for both girls. I'm trying to save for a house of my own." And there it was, the complete, unvarnished truth. "So you want me to live in the cheapest possible situation so there's more left over for you. I want you to be practical. You want me to be cheap. I want you to think about your family. I am thinking about my family, Kevin. I'm thinking about how my family sees me as a problem to be managed and a bank account to be preserved." Kevin ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd been making since he was a little boy when he was frustrated. "Mom, this is crazy. We're not having this conversation." "Yes, we are. We're finally having the conversation we should have had years ago." "Which is what?" "The conversation where you tell me exactly what you expect from me, and I tell you exactly what I'm going to do with my life." Kevin looked at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating something in his head. "Fine. You want to know what I think? I think you should sell this house, move to a nice retirement community, and stop spending money on things you don't need. I think you should live modestly and preserve as much as possible for your children, because that's what good parents do." The silence that followed was profound. I could hear the clock ticking on my kitchen wall, the hum of my refrigerator, the sound of a dog barking somewhere in the neighborhood. "Is that what James and Lisa think too?" "Yes." "And you've all discussed this?" "Yes." "And you've all agreed that this is what I should do with my life?" "We think it's what's best." "For whom?" "For everyone." I stood up slowly, my arthritis making my movements careful and deliberate. Kevin watched me, probably thinking I was going to get him more iced tea or offer him something to eat. Instead, I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at my garden. "Kevin, I want you to leave now." "What?" "I want you to leave my house." "Mom, I'm being what? Dramatic? Unreasonable? Selfish?" "You're being emotional." I turned to face him, and I must have looked different than he expected because he actually took a step back. "You're right. I am being emotional. I'm feeling a lot of emotions right now. Disappointment, sadness, anger, but most of all, I'm feeling clarity." "Clarity about what?" "About who my children really are." Kevin's face went pale. "Mom, you don't mean that." "I do mean it. And I want you to go now." "We can talk about this. We can work something out." "There's nothing to work out, Kevin. You've made your position very clear. You want me to live cheaply so you can inherit more money. You want me to make decisions based on what's best for your financial future, not what's best for my happiness or well-being." "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said." He stood there for another moment, and I could see him struggling with whether to keep arguing or to leave. Finally, he chose to leave. "I'm going to call James and Lisa. We need to talk about this as a family." "You do that. Have another meeting about me without me. I'm sure it will be very productive." After Kevin left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, just thinking. The house felt different somehow, quieter, like something had fundamentally shifted. That evening, my phone rang 3 times. James, Lisa, and Kevin, all calling to check on me and to try to smooth things over. I didn't answer any of the calls. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister Margaret in Florida. "Eleanor, what a wonderful surprise. How are you, honey?" Margaret is 5 years older than me, and she's always been the wise one in our family. After I told her everything that had happened, she was quiet for a long time. "Oh, honey," she finally said, "I'm so sorry. Margaret, am I being unreasonable? Am I wrong to be upset about this?" Eleanor, let me ask you something. If your children genuinely loved you and were genuinely concerned about your well-being, how do you think they would have approached this situation? I thought about it. They would have asked me what I wanted. They would have listened to my concerns. They would have offered to help me figure out solutions that made me happy. And did they do any of those things? No. Then you have your answer. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about everything Kevin had said, everything James and Lisa had implied. I thought about the way they looked at me, talked to me, planned for me without including me. And somewhere around 3 a.m., I made a decision that would change everything. But you guys, what I decided to do? You're not going to believe it. And the way my children reacted when they found out, I'm still laughing about it. And it's been 3 months. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about my research first, because what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about making a difference in the world. The next morning, I made myself a cup of coffee, sat down at my computer, and started looking up charitable organizations. If my children thought I was going to hoard my money for their benefit, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I spent the entire day researching. I looked at local food banks, homeless shelters, children's hospitals, scholarship funds, animal rescues. I read about organizations that provide clean water in developing countries, that build schools in underserved communities, and that fund medical research for diseases that don't get enough attention. And with each website I visited, each story I read, each photo of people whose lives had been changed by generosity, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. By the end of the week, I had identified 5 organizations that spoke to my heart. First, the local children's hospital where they had treated Kevin when he broke his arm at age 8. I remembered how kind the staff had been, how they made him feel brave and special, even when he was scared and hurting. Second, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. I thought about my own journey back to school at 40, how transformative education had been for me, and I wanted to give other people that same opportunity. Third, an organization that builds clean water systems in rural communities around the world. Clean water, such a basic human need, and yet millions of people don't have access to it. Fourth, a local animal rescue where I had volunteered briefly after Thomas died. The work they do is incredible, and they're always desperately in need of funding. And fifth, a research foundation dedicated to finding a cure for the type of cancer that took my husband. If my money could help even one family avoid what Thomas and I went through, it would be worth it. I spent another week researching these organizations thoroughly. I read their financial reports, looked up their ratings on charity watchdog websites, even called a few of them to ask questions about their programs. And then I did something that I'm still proud of. I made appointments to visit each organization in person. The Children's Hospital was first. The tour they gave me was incredible. I saw the new pediatric wing they were trying to fund, met some of the nurses and doctors, even talked to a few young patients and their families. The hope in those children's eyes, despite everything they were going through, it took my breath away. The scholarship fund was run out of a small office by a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been a first-generation college student herself. She showed me profiles of students they had helped, kids who were working 2 jobs while going to school, single mothers pursuing nursing degrees, young men who were the first in their families to even consider college. Each story was more inspiring than the last. The water organization's presentation showed me villages where children walked miles every day just to collect dirty water for their families to drink. But it also showed me the same villages after clean water systems were installed. Children in school instead of carrying water buckets. mothers starting small businesses, entire communities transformed. The animal rescue broke my heart and filled it at the same time. So many animals who had been abandoned, abused, or neglected, now living in comfort while waiting for their forever homes. The volunteers there work tirelessly, often spending their own money to provide medical care and comfort for animals that society has thrown away. And the Research Foundation, well, they're working on treatments that could have saved my Thomas, could save thousands of other people's Thomases. By the time I finished my visits, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I called my lawyer, a kind man named Mr. Peterson, who had handled Thomas's will and our estate planning. Eleanor, it's good to hear from you. How can I help you today? I want to restructure my will, and I want to make some substantial charitable donations. Of course, what did you have in mind? I want to donate my entire estate to charity. There was a pause. Your entire estate? Well, almost entire. I want to leave each of my children exactly $1. Another pause. Longer this time. Eleanor, this is a significant decision. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. May I ask what prompted this change? I told him
The lunch with James, the phone call with Lisa, the confrontation with Kevin. Mr. Peterson listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of understanding or sympathy. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Eleanor, I have to ask, is this decision being made out of anger? Partly, I admitted, but it's also being made out of clarity. My children don't see me as a person they love. They see me as an asset they're waiting to inherit. Well, if money is all they care about, then they're going to learn what it feels like to lose something precious. And you're certain about the organizations you want to benefit? Absolutely certain. All right then, let's draw up the paperwork. It took 2 weeks to get everything legally finalized. During that time, my children called several more times, but I let every call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to them yet. I was too busy planning the most satisfying moment of my entire life. Because, you see, I didn't just want to change my will. I wanted my children to understand exactly what they had lost and exactly why they had lost it. So I planned a family dinner. I called each of them and told them I had been thinking about our recent conversations, and I wanted to discuss my future plans. I invited them all to come to my house the following Saturday for dinner, and I promised we would have a serious conversation about my living situation and my finances. They all agreed to come immediately. Of course they did. They thought they were finally going to get me to see reason. That Saturday, I spent the morning cooking all of their favorite foods. James loves my pot roast. Lisa's favorite is my homemade lasagna. Kevin has always been crazy about my apple pie. I made all of it, plus fresh bread, roasted vegetables, and a chocolate cake for dessert. If this was going to be our last family dinner, I wanted it to be memorable. They arrived within minutes of each other at 5 p.m., and I could tell they had coordinated their arrival times, probably so they could present a united front. "Mom, something smells amazing in here," James said as he hugged me. "I made all your favorites," I replied, hugging him back and marveling at how normal this felt when I knew what was coming. Lisa brought flowers, which was unusual for her. Kevin brought a bottle of wine. They were clearly trying to butter me up. We made small talk during dinner. They told me about their jobs, their friends, their daily lives. For a moment, it almost felt like old times, like we were a real family again. But I could see them exchanging glances, and I knew they were just waiting for the right moment to launch into their prepared speeches about my future. After dinner, I served coffee and cake in the living room.
We sat in the same spots we'd always sat in during family gatherings. James in Thomas's old recliner, Lisa curled up on one end of the sofa, Kevin sprawled in the chair by the window. Mom, we wanted to thank you for dinner and for agreeing to have this conversation. Of course, sweetheart. We've all been thinking about what you said during our recent conversations, and we want you to know that we hear you. We understand that this is your life and your decision. I almost laughed. They had clearly rehearsed this. But, Lisa continued, we also want you to understand that we're coming from a place of love. We're worried about your safety and your future. And we want to present you with some options that might address your concerns while also addressing ours, Kevin added. Options? They had prepared options for me? I'm listening, I said. James pulled out a folder. We've researched several retirement communities in the area, places that offer independent living with the option to transition to assisted care if needed in the future. He spread out brochures on my coffee table, glossy pamphlets showing smiling seniors playing golf, painting watercolors, and eating in elegant dining rooms. This one's only 15 minutes from my house, James said, pointing to one brochure. You could see the girls all the time. And this one has a shuttle that goes to all the major shopping centers and the library, Lisa added, pointing to another. This one has the best medical facilities, full-time nursing staff, physical therapy, even a memory care unit if you ever need it. I looked at the brochures. They were beautiful in their way. The people in the photos looked happy and healthy and engaged. The facilities were clearly well-maintained and professionally managed. These look very nice, I said. I could see all three of them relax slightly. They thought I was weakening. The best part, James said, is that they're all much more affordable than trying to maintain this house and hire caregivers later. You could sell the house, pay for your care, and still have a substantial amount left over for... He paused, clearly not wanting to say our inheritance out loud. For emergencies, Lisa finished smoothly. For your legacy, Kevin added. Your legacy? Like the 45 years I spent raising them, supporting them, and loving them wasn't legacy enough? I appreciate all the research you've done. This clearly took a lot of time and effort. We just want what's best for you, Mom, Lisa said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. And what's best for the family as a whole, James added. I looked at my 3 children, these people I had given my whole heart to, and I felt that sense of clarity wash over me again. You're right. We do need to think about what's best for the family as a whole. They all smiled. Kevin actually pumped his fist slightly, like his team had just scored a touchdown.
I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this, Mom, James said. Oh, I'm being very reasonable. In fact, I've already made all the arrangements. Arrangements for what? Lisa asked. For my future. And for yours. I reached into the drawer of my end table and pulled out a large manila envelope. What's that? Kevin asked. This, I said, is my new will. The room went very quiet. I could practically hear their hearts beating. You changed your will? James asked carefully. I did. I've left each of you exactly what you deserve. I opened the envelope and pulled out 3 smaller envelopes, each with one of their names written on it in my careful handwriting. These are copies of the relevant pages. I wanted you each to have your own copies so there's no confusion later. I handed James his envelope first. He opened it with shaking hands, scanned the page, and went completely white. $1? He whispered. I handed Lisa her envelope. She read it and started shaking her head. Mom, this has to be a mistake. I handed Kevin his envelope. He read it and looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "You left us each $1? That's correct." "Where did the rest of it go?" Lisa asked, her voice rising. "To organizations that will use it to make the world a better place. To children who need medical care, to students who need education, to communities that need clean water, to animals that need homes, and to researchers who are trying to cure cancer." The silence that followed was deafening. "You gave away our inheritance?" James finally asked. "I gave away my money. It was never your inheritance until I died, and I'm very much alive." "But Mom," Lisa said, tears starting to flow, "we're your children." "Are you?" Because children love their parents. Children want their parents to be happy and healthy and fulfilled. Children don't see their parents as bank accounts with inconvenient opinions. "That's not fair," Kevin said, standing up abruptly. "We do love you." "Show me." "What?" "Show me. Tell me one thing you love about me that isn't related to this house or my money." They looked at each other, then back at me, then at each other again. We love that you're our mother," Lisa said weakly. "What else?" You're a good cook," James offered. "What else?" Silence. You can't, can you? You can't tell me one thing you genuinely love or appreciate about me as a person. "Mom, this is crazy," Kevin said. "You can't just give away everything we've worked for." "Everything you've worked for? When did you work for my money, Kevin?" "We've been good children." "Have you? When was the last time any of you called me just to check in on me? When was the last time you visited without wanting something? When was the last time you asked about my dreams, my hopes, my fears?" "We've had our own lives to live," Lisa protested. "And I have mine, and I've decided to live it on my own terms." James was staring at his copy of the will like he couldn't believe what he was reading. "You gave $100,000 to an animal shelter?" "I did." "Animals, Mom. You chose animals over your own grandchildren." "Those animals needed help. Your grandchildren have parents who can provide for them." "You gave money to strangers instead of your own family?" "I gave money to people who will use it to help others instead of people who only wanted it for themselves." The argument that followed was ugly. They yelled, they cried, they accused me of being selfish and cruel and mentally unstable. They threatened to contest the will, to have me declared incompetent, to never speak to me again. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," Kevin said as they finally prepared to leave. "No," I replied. "The biggest mistake of my life was raising children who see love as a transaction." After they left, I sat in my quiet house and felt peaceful. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. And you know what happened next? My life got so much better. Without the constant worry about what my children wanted from me, without the guilt about spending my own money on myself, without the pressure to preserve their inheritance, I started actually living. I hired a housekeeper to help with the heavy cleaning. I bought a new car. I joined a book club and a gardening society. I started taking art classes at the community center. And the phone calls? They stopped. Completely. For about 6 weeks, none of my children contacted me at all. Then, Kevin called. "Mom?" His voice was small, uncertain. "Hello, Kevin?" I wanted to apologize." I almost dropped the phone. "You wanted to what?" "I wanted to apologize for the things I said, for the way I treated you. I've been thinking about our conversation and I realized I was wrong."
What made you realize that? I was talking to my therapist about it, and she asked me the same question you asked me. She asked me when was the last time I called you just because I missed you. And I couldn't answer her. Kevin, Mom, I don't care about the money. I mean, I do care about it, but not more than I care about you. I want to have a relationship with you that isn't about inheritance or finances or any of that stuff. I want to know about your book club and your art classes and what makes you happy. I started crying. Not sad tears, but relief tears. I'd like that very much, sweetheart. Can I take you to lunch this weekend? Just because I want to spend time with you. I would love that. He told me about his work, his friends, his hopes for the future. We talked for 3 hours, and not once did anyone mention money or inheritances or retirement communities. It took Lisa another month to call, but when she did, the conversation was similar. She apologized, she cried, she asked if she could come visit, just to see me, not to discuss my living situation or my finances. James took the longest. It was almost 3 months before he called, and his apology was the most difficult because he had the most pride to swallow. But eventually, he came around too. And now I have real relationships with my children for the first time in years. They call regularly, not because they want something, but because they genuinely want to know how I'm doing. They visit without agendas. They ask about my life, my interests, my feelings. Do they wish I hadn't given away their inheritance? Probably. But they've learned something valuable. Love isn't a commodity, and relationships aren't investments. As for me, I'm still living in my house, still tending my gardens, still making my own decisions about my own life. I hired a wonderful young woman named Manda to help me with household tasks and to drive me places when my arthritis is acting up. She's become like a daughter to me, and guess what? She loves me for who I am, not for what I might leave her someday. The organizations I donated to have sent me the most beautiful thank you letters. The Children's Hospital named a room after Thomas and me. The Scholarship Fund has already helped 12 students start college. The Water Organization has built 3 new wells in communities that desperately needed them. The Animal Rescue has been able to expand their facilities and help twice as many animals. And the Cancer Research Foundation is funding a promising new treatment that could help thousands of people. My money is making a real difference in the world. It's helping children, students, families, animals, and sick people. It's creating hope where there was despair, opportunity where there was limitation, health where there was illness. And that feels infinitely better than knowing it would have been spent on bigger houses and fancier cars and luxury vacations for people who already have everything they need. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. Your worth as a person isn't determined by what you can give others. Your relationships shouldn't be based on transactions, and your love shouldn't come with conditions. If the people in your life only value you for what you can do for them, then maybe it's time to find people who value you for who you are. As for my children, well, they're learning, and I'm proud of them for that. It took losing everything to realize what really mattered, but they got there eventually. And me? I'm 72 years old, I'm living exactly the life I want to live, and I've never been happier. Sometimes the best revenge is a life well lived. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to discover what really matters. Trust me on this one, guys. I know what I'm talking about.